I hope I'm able to simplify the mesentery for you. I'll have to go a little fast and I'll try to show only those cases which are relevant to your exam as it comes up. The rest, there is a lot of time for us to discuss later on. So here we go. So peritoneum is a serous membrane which covers the inside of the abdominal wall. All of you know this. And what happens is when the organs grow from the posterior abdominal wall, they indent the peritoneal cavity. When they indent it, they can be either totally covered by peritoneum, like this, in which case they are called intraperitoneal, or they can be covered only on the anterior surface, in which they are called retroperitoneal. Now, what is a mesentery? So mesentery is a subset of a peritoneum, and it is a peritoneal fold that suspends an organ from the posterior abdominal wall, right? And what is a ligament? A ligament is a fold of peritoneum which connects two organs like this. So why do you need mesentery? You need a mesentery because if you did not have a mesentery attaching a mobile structure to the posterior abdominal wall, it would just fall into the pelvis. And also, the aorta is along the posterior abdominal wall, so you need blood to come into the organ somehow or the other. So the mesentery provides the a safe space for the vessels to travel. Most dreaded subject ever for me, embryology. So I'll try and make this as simple as possible. First of all, there is a tube which forms the bowel. Okay, you have the foregut, midgut, and hindgut. Foregut supplied by celiac axis, midgut supplied by the superior mesenteric artery, hindgut supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. That we are done with. Okay, like I told you, there is an aorta along the posterior abdominal wall which is going to suspend the bowel from its mesentery. So this is called the dorsal mesentery because it comes from the aorta. So the dorsal mesentery is present for the entire bowel, and then there is only the stomach and the first part of the duodenum for some weird reason have a ventral mesentery. In the ventral mesentery develops the liver and a few other organs like the gallbladder. So from the stomach, where it goes to the anterior abdominal wall, there is the ventral mesentery, and in the middle of that is the liver. So between the lesser curvature on the stomach and the liver, there is a mesentery which will become the lesser omentum. And these things will all become ligaments which fix the liver to the anterior abdominal wall. So there we are done with the ventral mesentery. What about the dorsal mesentery? The dorsal mesentery will form all these ligaments between the spleen and the stomach, which we are not going to go into. It will form the greater omentum because it is attached to the greater curvature, and as you all know, greater omentum is attached to the greater curvature. It will form the mesentery of the small bowel, the transverse mesocolon, and the sigmoid mesocolon. All right. Like I told you, again, this is a cross section. You see the stomach tube. What will happen is that the liver will rotate to the right, the stomach will be pushed to the left, and they will form two big peritoneal cavities, one of which will be known as the greater sac, which will be the big one because it is greater, and one of which is known as the lesser sac. All right. So if you want to simplify it, the peritoneum comes like this from the liver, reflects off the stomach, goes down as the greater omentum, goes to the transverse colon, reflects off that, goes to the pancreas, and then goes over the small bowel and thereby goes back all the way up. So while it does that, between the liver and the stomach, do you remember what was formed? It was the lesser omentum. So this will be the lesser omentum. Then from the stomach, you have the greater omentum. The greater omentum will hang down and it will form two folds here. From the liver, again you will have a trace which will go downwards. From the stomach, transverse colon, go back, this will form the lesser sac. So you have the greater omentum which has got actually 4 layers. 2 layers coming from the greater sac, 2 layers coming from the lesser sac. Between the transverse colon and the pancreas, this will be the transverse mesocolon, and suspending the small bowel mesentery will be the suspending the small bowel from the posterior abdominal wall will be the mesentery of the small bowel. Between these two will be the epiploic foramen. So this was a bit confusing. Let's go back and look at how we can simplify this on CT. So when you put in contrast or you do a CT peritoneography, between the liver and the stomach, remember what it was? The lesser omentum. From the colon back to the pancreas, remember what it was? It was the transverse mesocolon. From the posterior abdominal wall to the small bowel, it was the small bowel mesentery. And then you have the sigmoid mesocolon, which we are not going to go into too much. So what is the mesentery? The mesentery, like I told you, is something that suspends stuff from the posterior abdominal wall. So earlier the concept was that there are only three mesenteries: the small intestine mesentery, the transverse mesocolon, and the mesosigmoid. And they said that, you know, these three are separate and they are fragmented. But there is a mesentery. Now the concept is that the mesentery is continuous from the DJ flexure down to the rectum. And because of the foldings, you can see few of them which are mobile and some get attached to the posterior abdominal wall. And therefore, you also have a right mesocolon and a left mesocolon, which surgeons always used to say is the case. Also, they say that a lot of diseases are mediated by the mesentery, such as Crohn's disease. So when I tell you that I can see the stomach, I can see the lesser omentum, I can see the greater omentum, I can see the transverse mesocolon, and I can see the mesentery of the small intestine, everything looks the same on a CT, right? Everything has fat in it. This is fat, this is fat, this is fat. So how do you decide these various compartments or these various structures that this is where this is and this is where this is? For that, you need to look at the vessels, right? And the embryology that we just saw. So one thing you should be aware of is that before the vessels go into the, penetrate into the bowel, they form marginal arteries. All right, see these marginal arteries anastomose with each other. So let's look at the two main arteries which supply the midgut and the hindgut. Celiac axis just supplies a bit of the foregut. So here comes the SMA. All the left-sided branches of the SMA supply the small bowel, jejunum and ileum. The ileocolic branch supplies the IC junction and the portion of the colon. Then you have the right-sided branch, which are, so the right-sided branches supply the colon, except for the IC junction, and the left-sided branches supply the small bowel. So you have the right colic artery and you have the middle colic artery. The middle colic artery is the artery of the transverse mesocolon. The superior mesenteric artery is the artery of the small bowel mesentery. All right, the right colic artery is the artery of the ascending mesocolon. And as far as the IMA goes, the IMA has a left colic branch which has ascending and descending branches. And these branches supply the left colon and the left mesocolon. So this is the artery of the left mesocolon and the left colon. Similarly, the veins are corresponding to the arteries. And we are going to see how we can use these vessels to decide where we are. First, let's look at the lesser omentum. Do you remember we said between the stomach and the liver will be the lesser omentum? Over here on CT, between the stomach and the liver, here is where you will get the lesser omentum. And the left gastric vessels, that is the left gastric artery and vein, will run in the lesser omentum. The lesser omentum has two parts. One part which is next to the stomach, which is called the gastrohepatic ligament. One part which goes from the duodenum, which is called the hepatoduodenal ligament. They are in continuity. The hepatoduodenal ligament is seen by the portal vein and the common hepatic artery and the bile duct. So the portal vein runs in the free edge of the lesser omentum. That is all you need to know. So if you want to identify the lesser omentum, you only need to go to the space between the stomach and the liver and look for the left gastric vessels. The transverse mesocolon, right? Something which we don't pay much attention to. So how do you identify the transverse mesocolon? Well, it goes from the colon posteriorly to the pancreas, right? So this is the portion of the transverse mesocolon. On a peritoneography, the splenic flexure is generally higher than the hepatic flexure. This is the transverse mesocolon. What if I don't have a peritoneography? Then you look for something called the gastrocolic trunk. You may not have an arterial phase all the time, right? So you look for the vessel which runs here, where you expect the mesenteric margin of the transverse mesocolon to be. This is what is known as the gastrocolic trunk of Henle. In this, you will get vessels which come from the right colon and the left colon. So the left colic and right colic vessels and also the gastroepiploic vessels all will form a common trunk and drain into the SMV to form the gastrocolic trunk. So if you are not sure how to look for the transverse mesocolon, follow the vessel from the gastrocolic trunk. One vessel will run along the greater curvature of the stomach, which will be the gastroepiploic vessel. And below that, there will be one vessel running which will be the left colic vein, which will be in the transverse mesocolon. I hope I'm clear about how to follow these vessels so that you know which fat they are going into, and the corresponding fat will be the mesentery of that bowel. The small bowel mesentery, which is traditionally what we call the mesentery and the source of most of our exam questions. So the small bowel mesentery extends from the DJ flexure to the transverse to the IC junction. I never understood in my undergraduate days what they meant by this. So what happens is the attachment of the mesentery is only this much, and the rest of the mesentery spreads out like a fan or like a ghagara or like a Japanese fan. So the posterior portion or attached portion is small, and the mobile portion is very, very large. So this is the portion, only portion where it is attached to the posterior abdominal wall. Now there is a term known as the root of the mesentery. So some people use this whole attachment as meaning root of mesentery, and some people say only the portion where the SMA becomes intramesenteric. It has to come from the aorta. Remember, the aorta is a retroperitoneal structure, and then it goes into the mesentery. So where it enters the mesentery, some people say that is the root of the mesentery, and this is the suspension of the small bowel from the mesentery. So the small bowel is suspended from the posterior abdominal wall by a fold of peritoneum, which is known as the mesentery, into which the vessels and lymphatics and fat is also present, and the vessels supply the small bowel through the mesentery. Okay. Now, there are two compartments basically for the surgeon and for you. All right. One is the supramesocolic compartment. So first try and identify where is your lesion. If your lesion is supramesocolic, it is unlikely to be from the small bowel mesentery. And if your lesion is inframesocolic, it is unlikely to be from the transverse mesocolon mesentery or the lesser omentum, right? So remember these things, that inframesocolic will be either greater omentum or the small bowel mesentery, and supramesocolic will be transverse mesocolon or the small bowel. Also remember that when you have a surgeon who does a surgery like a gastrojejunostomy or a hepatojejunostomy, this is the small intestine. This has to go either to the stomach or to the liver. How will it go? It can either go anterior to the transverse colon, in which case they call it an anticolic anastomosis, or they have to make a hole in the transverse mesocolon to take the bowel through and then join it. This is called a retrocolic anastomosis. And this has implications for you clinically. Another surgical concept for you for the small bowel mesentery. So these are both of them are similarly sized lesions. Okay, as I said, if this is the SMA and it is giving out branches, and this is the mesentery and this is the small bowel at the margin of the mesentery. If the lesion is located peripherally near the small bowel lumen, then you only have to remove this much of the small bowel and the lesion will come out. If this lesion is located more towards the center of the mesentery, where the SMA is giving off its major branches, then to remove this lesion, you will have to remove this much of bowel, because the blood supply of the lesion of the distal bowel will be compromised if you try and just remove this. So remember this. This is how you think of resectability. And when this lesion comes into the main artery, then you cannot remove the lesion, because if you remove the main artery, all this bowel will die off. So that is concept one. Concept two is that when you do a small bowel resection anastomosis, or let's say you do a gastrojejunostomy, you remove this portion of the bowel. If you want to keep this bowel alive, you also remove this mesentery and take it up with the bowel. What happens is then you leave a big hole over here in the mesentery, and through this bowel or this bowel can herniate, and this is the concept of a post-surgical internal herniation. So this is the gap through which an internal herniation can take place. And so the concept is that when you remove a piece of the mesentery, unless you close the mesentery, you will have a gap there. So this is just landmarks for mesentery, how you will decide which mesentery is which. So left gastric artery, epiploic vessels, SMA, SMB, middle colic, marginal branches from the right colic, marginal branches from left colic, and right and left gastroepiploic. So just to tell you from where, which structure goes where, and how you look at the vessels, right? All right. So let's see if this runs. Are you guys able to see the video? Is the bandwidth?
Yes, sir. We can see the video.
Okay. So now just to show you what I told you, okay? From the top, this is the left gastric vessel. This would be the gastrohepatic ligament, and these are the left. So this would be the lesser omentum. Coming down, the portal vein is running here. So when you identify the portal vein, you are identifying the hepatoduodenal ligament. Coming further down, we want to see where is the transverse mesocolon. So we look at our gastrocolic trunk. We follow. So this is the vessel that is coming from the right colon, right? So this would be mesentery of the right colon. Then we go up. This is the vessel that is coming from the left colon. So this would be the mesentery of the left colon. So this would be the, over this, see this is the colon. So along its mesenteric attachment from here to the pancreas, you would see the transverse mesocolon. Anteriorly, you can see some vessels which come from the gastroepiploic artery. That is the greater omentum. All right. And this one, where you can see the vessels, the superior and inferior mesenteric vessels running, this is the largest one, which we always think of as the mesentery. This is the mesentery of the small bowel, right? This would be the mesentery. This is the descending colon. So this would be the mesentery of the descending colons. How do we know that? We look at this vessel. You want to see where it is going. It goes into this structure. This structure goes up. And this is the inferior mesenteric artery. So left colon being supplied from the inferior mesenteric artery. So we are sure this is the mesentery of the descending colon. So this is how we decide where we are as far as the mesentery is concerned, because all fat looks the same. You can do the same thing on the coronal images. Sorry. Right? So look at these images. So from the greater curvature comes the greater omentum. The space between the stomach and the colon is also known as the gastrocolic ligament. You don't need to know this, but it's good if you do. And this is what the surgeons cut when they want access to the lesser sac. This is just an extra piece of information. So again, we want to look at the gastrocolic trunk, which is somewhere here. And these are the vessels that go to the right colon over here. And then we want to look at vessels that go to the left colon. They are over here. So this would be the transverse mesocolon. So this is how we decide where is the transverse mesocolon, where is the small bowel mesentery, where is the lesser omentum, and so on and so forth. Moving on to pathology. So this is something which is a somewhat nebulous pathology. This is misty mesentery or sclerosing mesenteritis. If you look around the vessels, there is a fat halo sign. So you get an ill-defined area of increased attenuation along the attachment or the root of the small bowel mesentery. This is what is known as sclerosing mesenteritis. It has 3 stages, 2 of which we can see. One is mesenteric paniculitis and the other is retractile mesenteritis. Retractile mesenteritis presents with soft tissue masses which may be calcified. Mesenteric paniculitis can also, however, be seen on MR, and you can see it most best on the fat sat or the T1 weighted images, because on T2, the bright fat may be, the edema merges with the bright fat, and this is a small pseudo capsule you may see in these patients. Do not mistake this for a pathology like this. So if you see ill-defined soft tissue thickening which is thicker, or you see mesenteric adenopathy or tissue like this, always think of a lymphoma. Do not just call it misty mesentery. Lymphoma will generally present like this. The most well-known and famous in the world sandwich sign, where you see fat around the mesenteric vessels, but you see mesenteric adenopathy around the vessels. And lymphoma is the most common soft tissue mass, solid soft tissue mass of the small bowel mesentery. This is another very common soft tissue mass which we see in our practice, and it is seen mainly in women. It is a mass which is iso-dense or iso-intense to muscle. And when you give contrast, it generally shows, it takes up contrast and retains it, which suggests that it has a fibrous stroma. So this is a MR image of the same pathology, not mine, taken from the net. And what this is a fibromatosis or a desmoid tumor. So the small bowel mesentery is the most common site of origin of intra-abdominal fibromatosis. Fibromatosis can show you a myxoid stroma and it may give you a whorled appearance, particularly on MRI. And it is associated with polyposis syndrome, particularly Gardner syndrome, and this is an important exam case for you. So what happens? So my concept was that fibromatosis always presents like a mass. But when I was reading for this talk, I came across lots of cases where patients who had Gardner syndrome and had any kind of surgery would then present with a mass like this. So fibromatosis can also present like an infiltrative mass, and please keep that in mind when you are looking at these infiltrative masses. Sometimes this was diagnosed as a GIST by us, and we thought, so GIST can look like this in enhancing tumors, well-defined mesenteric tumors which perforate into the bowel, but this was also a case of fibromatosis. So fibromatosis can also present like with small bowel obstruction and perforation of bowel. Keep that in mind whenever you are discussing a case. This is another common exam case that you guys may get. There is a mass in the mesentery, and you have to look carefully to see there is another mass in the small bowel. So if you have an enhancing mass in the mesentery, enhancing mass in the small bowel, even if you don't see a lot of speculation or a desmoplastic reaction, always think of a carcinoid. And this is a Dotanox scan, which has been done for this patient, showing you both these masses and no other masses and no metastatic disease. This is another type of, this is the more classical carcinoid you guys may see. So there is no lesion in the small bowel in this patient, but what you do see is a mass with calcification within. This calcified mass is causing tethering of the small bowel, and you can see it is extending in a linear fashion along the SMV. So the SMV is getting blocked off. You can see, you can't see the distal SMV. The small bowel is edematous thickened, enhancing less. That is why this patient has acute pain. So sometimes you can get a carcinoid which presents like mesenteric ischemia because it blocks off the vessels. So I'm not going to go into the theory here. Just be careful to differentiate it from sclerosing mesenteritis. Sclerosing mesenteritis will enhance more in the later phases. It will be more commonly located near the root of these, where the root of the small bowel mesentery, near the SMA origin, and it will it will enhance later, whereas the carcinoid will enhance earlier. Sometimes this is a lesion which is not uncommon, infiltrative lesion with some enhancing soft tissue which was reported. You can see there are collaterals over here. If you go further, you can see the lesion is totally encasing the mesenteric vein and artery. And the superior mesenteric vein, you can't see the ileal vein at all. What you see is this portion of the mesentery, and then this portion of the mesenteric vein, and this portion. What is happening to this portion? This has been blocked off by the tumor, and collateral flow is happening. So this is the importance of the marginal vessels, which I told you earlier. The marginal vessels will take this blood from here and deliver it back and deliver it back. So you may have tumors which are very advanced by the time you get to see them. Now, what was the soft tissue? This was a lymphangioma. So what was this soft tissue? So always remember that whenever mesentery is congested, you can get soft tissue like lesions or lymphatics which become really thickened, and that is not true tumor. Those are just contents of the mesentery which become thick. And you may see this in patients with portal hypertension as well. And EHPVO, do not call them lymphadenopathy. Another cystic lesion, again a young child encasing the mesentery, but you see fat, you see calcium, you see fluid. Don't just look at the big component and get scared. I'm sure the examiner will give you clues to what this is, so always look for these clues. This was a dermoid or a teratoma, and this is an image taken from the literature to show you a fat fluid level which you may see in a dermoid. So always in a young person, think of a developmental lesion. Peritoneal hydatidosis is just to show you that you may, because you may get this in a spotter, and this one is actually growing along the transverse mesocolon, and you can see the shape of the lesion. So sometimes if you know the anatomy and you know things, you see interesting stuff. This is a case you may get in your exam, which is why I put this in. It should be reasonably simple. There are T2 dark whorled appearance lesions arising from the pelvis of a young female, distributed throughout the mesentery and omentum, and this is basically leiomyomatosis. You differentiate it from carcinomatosis by the fact that the lesions are T2 dark, there is no ascites, and generally there will be young females, and you possibly will see fibroids in the uterus if it is still there. A young child with another cystic lesion. So a cystic lesion in a young child. We've looked at lymphangiomas, we've looked at dermoids and developmental lesions. And this is a lesion which had a big cystic component. Then it had a tube-like structure which went and attached to the small bowel. So the two main differential diagnoses for this patient would be either a duplication cyst, in which case it would have a long segment of attachment with the bowel, which this does not, or a Meckel's diverticulum. So when you have a child with painless GI bleed, always think of a Meckel's diverticulum. This is heterotopic gastric mucosa, and this patient actually, this was a huge diverticulum, a Meckel's diverticulum. So always think of Meckel's in a young child, always think of a duplication cyst and a developmental lesion. So these are the lesions, cystic lesions of mesentery, keep them in mind: lymphatic, mesothelial, enteric, teratomas, non-pancreatic pseudocysts, hydatid cysts, and ovarian cysts, because sometimes when you can get parovarian cysts even though you can see both ovaries. So particularly in young girls, or even in antenatal scans, you will see a huge cystic lesion which is subhepatic. That again, I was wrong rather. So there was a lesion in the root of the mesentery. It is encasing the SMA. So we said, remember the wheel I showed you. If you cut off this portion of the SMA, then you will not get blood supply to the distal bowel. So we told the surgeon it's probably inoperable. He went ahead and operated. 3 months later, I think the patient came back. There is a pseudoaneurysm because the surgeon tried to remove as much as possible, and the artery got injured. And this is a classical image where you can see that though he tied off the SMV, you can still see that there is collateral flow which is going across because of the marginal vessels which I told you. So if you try to remove the entire small bowel, entire vascular arcade from here, you would have to remove all of this bowel. So that is how you decide whether the lesion is resectable in the mesentery or not. 42-year male patient, pain abdomen, fat density lesion, right iliac fossa. Okay. So first thing, pain abdomen. So you think of either an inflammatory lesion, or you think of an infective lesion, or you think of some kind of a vascular etiology, torsion, etc. Even the omentum in front was hazy. So two things we did think of. One was a large omental infarct, and the other thing was that maybe it is a tumor which has torsed. Okay. This turned out to be a lipoma with inflammation for some reason, God knows what, but it was a lipoma. I would never in an adult of 42 years old diagnose a lipoma, and neither should you. More common would be something like this, okay, which is a liposarcoma. Always remember that even a lesion which shows pure fat density in an adult can be a well-differentiated liposarcoma. So fat containing lesion, mesentery of small bowel, again, look at the vascular involvement. So if you want to remove this lesion, you have to remove all of this bowel, because you will never be able to preserve this vascular arcade. And if you destroy this vascular arcade, the bowel will infarct and die. So these are peculiarities of the mesentery and mesenteric tumors. This tumor we thought was a was a jejunal tumor or jejunal carcinoma invading the mesentery. It turned out to be a synovial cell carcinoma or synovial cell sarcoma of the mesentery. So remember, you can get sarcomatous lesions in the mesentery. Anything which arises from the connective tissues or soft tissues can also arise in the mesentery of the small bowel. Don't ever forget this in our country. Necrotic lesions, nodular areas of peritoneal thickening, some sac formation. This was TB. We did not talk about the sigmoid mesocolon because it is rare. And this is a classic sigmoid volvulus. And how do you know it's sigmoid or not something else? Because you trace back the pedicle which is twisting, and you see it is coming from the inferior mesenteric artery. So the inferior mesenteric artery is being twisted. The inferior mesenteric artery is the artery of the hindgut. So this is a pathology of the hindgut. And once you've diagnosed the twisting of the hindgut, you've diagnosed the sigmoid volvulus. Internal hernias, we don't have time for, I'm sorry, but just look for a clustering, look for two areas. So when you have a hernia, you will operative hernia, and I wanted to, this is the gap I was telling you about. So they brought the jejunum up, right? And they've anastomosed it here. Wait, just a second. So this is the stomach on the top here. This is bariatric surgery. They have anastomosed this to the jejunum. This is the jejunum, which is going to go down. And when they made a hole, the remainder of the small bowel went through the hole. And this is the terminal ileum. Follow this vessel, follow this structure, and you can see it is going to go across inside and this hernial sac. So it goes, so the bowel herniates all the way across through the defect that the surgeons have created and into this hernia. And that is why, and there is obviously some mesenteric obstruction, which you can see here. See how the mesentery is getting twisted. That is why there is haziness and ascites. This is known as a Peterson's hernia. And I'm sorry I had to go a little fast, but I just wanted to show you all the exam cases. So you must know which mesentery you are looking at. You must realize what is the vascular anatomy, what is going in and what is coming out. And you should generally have no problem either in practice or in. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir, for this excellent talk, as always. And really, you have made me